I want you to understand something that will save you from blaming yourself for the timing of their regret. Avoidants often realize the damage late, not because your love wasn't real, not because you weren't enough, but because their nervous system processes loss in a delayed way, like a person who doesn't feel the pain of a wound until the adrenaline wears off, and by the time it hits them, you've already been bleeding quietly for a long time. In the beginning, when they pulled away, they didn't call it heartbreak, they called it space. They called it, I need time, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not in the right place. And you, because you loved them, translated those words into something hopeful. You told yourself they were just scared. You told yourself this is what it looks like when someone has walls. You told yourself your patience would be the thing that makes them feel safe enough to stay. So you became gentle in moments where you were actually aching. You became understanding in moments where you were actually cracking. You became quiet about your needs because you thought asking for more would push them farther. And then the distance would come, the slow replies, the cold tone, the sudden disappearing act after a moment of closeness. And you felt it immediately. Your body felt it. Your chest felt it. Your mind felt it. You started scanning for signs, replaying conversations, wondering what you did wrong, wondering which word was too much, which emotion was too heavy, which moment made them retreat. Meanwhile, they didn't always feel what you felt. Not right away, because for many avoidants, distance brings relief first, and that relief can look like peace, but it's not peace. It's the quiet that comes from not having to face intimacy, not having to face expectations, not having to face the vulnerability they don't know how to hold. So the first stage is relief. They feel lighter, they feel unpressured, they feel like they can breathe. And you see that and it breaks you because you're thinking, how can they breathe while I'm drowning? How can they look fine when I'm falling apart? How can they go on with their day while I'm sitting in my room trying not to cry over a message that never came? And that's the part you have to stop personalizing, because relief is not proof they didn't care. Relief is proof their fear was activated and distance calmed it down. It doesn't mean you didn't matter. It means closeness scared them more than loss did, at least at first. But relief doesn't last. Relief wears off when reality shows up. And reality shows up in small, brutal ways. Reality shows up when they reach for their phone and don't see your name lighting up the screen. Reality shows up when they realize you're not sending the good morning you used to send, not checking in, not asking if they're okay. Reality shows up when the silence they created stops being filled by your effort, because your effort was the cushion. Your effort was the emotional insurance that told them they could pull away and still not lose you. The moment that cushion disappears, the second stage arrives, emptiness. And emptiness feels different than relief. Emptiness feels like walking into a room where the music stopped. Emptiness feels like realizing the warmth you were used to wasn't automatic. It was someone choosing you every day, even when you didn't make it easy. Emptiness feels like noticing the little things, the way you remembered their stress, the way you listened to their silence, the way you offered softness without demanding perfection. Emptiness is where memory starts speaking, and memory doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers when they're alone. It whispers when they're driving. It whispers when they're lying in bed, and there's no one there to soothe them. That's when their mind starts doing something uncomfortable. It starts replaying. Not the version of the story where they were the hero, not the version where you were too much, but the real version. The version where you tried. The version where you stayed kind even when you were confused. The version where you asked for clarity and they gave you distance. The version where you loved them and they made you feel like you had to earn the basics. And slowly, the third stage starts forming, the realization. It doesn't always arrive as guilt immediately. Sometimes it arrives as curiosity first. They check your social media, not because they're obsessed, but because they're unsettled. They ask mutual friends about you, not because they're ready to commit, but because they need to know if you're still there. They send a casual message, something small, something safe. Hey, how have you been? Because they want to test if the old dynamic still exists. Because what they're really testing is not love, it's access. They want to know if your heart is still open for them to step into without changing anything. And if you respond like you used to, quickly, warmly, gratefully, the realization gets delayed again. The guilt goes quiet again. the lesson gets postponed again, because the avoidant mind learns I can still have them without growing. I can still have comfort without consistency. I can still keep the door open without building a home. But if you stay steady, if you don't punish them, but you also don't hand over your heart, that's when the realization hits harder. That's when they feel the weight of what they broke, because they start to notice the difference in you. They notice your energy is different. They notice you don't reach the same. They notice you're not trying to convince them anymore. They notice your tone is calm, not eager. And that calm becomes terrifying, because it's the calm of someone who has accepted reality. It's the calm of someone who has finally chosen self-respect. It's the calm of someone who is no longer waiting to be picked. And that's when the late realization arrives in full. They didn't just lose a relationship, they lost a person who loved them in a rare way. They lost the one who tried to understand their silence. They lost the one who offered patience. They lost the one who stayed loyal while being left uncertain. And now they have to live with the echo of that, not because you wanted revenge, but because you finally stopped bleeding in silence. So if you're sitting there wondering why it took them so long, why they didn't realize when you were crying, why they didn't realize when you were pleading for clarity, why they didn't realize when you were still right there loving them, I need you to hear this. Their late realization is not a measurement of your worth. It's a measurement of their capacity to face intimacy without running. And the moment you stop chasing is often the moment reality finally catches up to them. And by then, you're already learning how to breathe again, already learning how to sleep again, already learning how to live without waiting for a message to decide your value, already rebuilding your heart in quiet ways, already becoming someone they can't reach the same way anymore, because your love is no longer available for free. Your presence is no longer guaranteed, and the damage they realize they caused doesn't arrive as a single thunderclap. It arrives like a slow, unavoidable sunrise that forces them to see what they did, what they lost, what they broke, and what they can't rewind. I didn't understand at first why my broken heart would become the thing they couldn't escape. I thought it would be my anger that would finally make them see. I thought it would be the long message, the confrontation, the tears, the proof, the explanations. I thought if I could just put my pain into perfect words, it would force them to feel it with me. But an avoidant doesn't always respond to emotion the way you do. Sometimes they shut down, sometimes they freeze, sometimes they disappear. Not because they don't have feelings, but because feelings feel dangerous to them, like a wave that will pull them under. So when I tried to reach them through my hurt, all they heard was pressure, and when they heard pressure, they ran. What made them finally realize they destroyed my heart wasn't the intensity of my pain, it was the quiet of my withdrawal. It was the moment my heart stopped knocking on their door. It was the moment my voice went calm. It was the moment I didn't ask, didn't chase, didn't beg, didn't demand. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I finally understood that chasing after someone who keeps leaving is like pouring love into a cup with a crack. No matter how much you pour, it still leaks, and you end up empty. I remember the night it happened. Nothing dramatic, no final fight, just a silence that lasted longer than it ever had before. I stared at my phone until my eyes burned. I typed and deleted messages like I was bargaining with my own dignity. I wanted to say, please just tell me what's happening. I wanted to say, I can handle the truth, I just can't handle the uncertainty. But then I asked myself the one question that changed everything. If they cared, would I be here begging for clarity? And the answer was so painful, it felt like it cracked something open in me, because I realized I had been trying to make love out of inconsistency, trying to build security out of silence, trying to heal someone who kept cutting me. So I stopped, not with a speech, not with a block, not with revenge, but with a boundary that was silent and firm. I withdrew my emotional energy. I stopped reaching first. I stopped explaining. I stopped offering my softness as a solution for their coldness. And at first, it felt like I was losing. It felt like I was letting them win. It felt like I was giving up the only thing that could keep us together. But what I was really doing was letting reality speak, because reality always speaks louder when you stop covering it with your effort. And that's when my broken heart became a mirror they couldn't escape. Because a mirror doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't chase. It just reflects. My silence reflected what their distance had done to me. My absence reflected what their inconsistency had cost. My calm reflected the exhaustion of a heart that had finally stopped trying to prove it deserved basic respect. And that reflection started following them into places they couldn't run from, into quiet moments, into lonely nights, into the space where your warmth used to live. They began to notice the change, not because I told them, but because they felt it. They felt it when their phone didn't light up with my name. They felt it when they pulled away and didn't find me waiting. They felt it when they tried to return casually and the door wasn't open the same way. They felt it when the version of me they could manage was gone. And that's what makes a mirror unbearable for someone who avoids accountability. It shows them the consequence without giving them something to fight against. Because when you're angry, they can make you the problem. They can call you emotional. They can say you're overreacting. They can hide behind your tone and ignore your truth. But when you're calm, when you're quiet, when you're simply no longer available for the same cycle, there is nothing to blame. There is only the outcome. There is only the reality that you got tired of bleeding. There is only the truth that they broke something in you, not in one dramatic moment, but in 100 small moments of distance, silence, hot and cold affection, and shifting ground under your feet. That's when guilt starts to rise. And guilt is a terrifying emotion for an avoidant, not because they're evil, but because guilt requires emotional presence. Guilt requires you to sit with what you did. Guilt requires you to admit you hurt someone who loved you. And some avoidants, when guilt rises, try to outrun it. They distract themselves. They act busy. They date someone else. They tell themselves you were too much because it's easier than admitting they were too little. But your absence keeps the mirror in place. They can't rewrite the story as easily when the consequence is standing right in front of them, a consequence that looks like you moving on, you growing quieter, you no longer chasing. And then they test. That's what many avoidants do when they feel the mirror closing in. They test access, a small text, a casual, hey, a, how have you been, a late-night check-in, something designed to see if your heart is still hooked. In the past, you might have responded instantly, grateful for any sign. But if you respond from your boundary, if you respond slowly, calmly, with self-respect, you keep the mirror intact. You show them your heart is not a revolving door. You show them you can no longer be managed by inconsistency. You show them if they want closeness now, it has to come with consistency. And that's where the realization becomes unavoidable. They start remembering the way you loved them. Not just what you said, but how you showed up. They remember your patience. They remember your softness. They remember how you tried to understand them instead of attacking them. They remember the safety you offered, the kind of safety they didn't know how to hold. And those memories begin to sting, because now they have to face the truth. You were not difficult. You were devoted. And they treated devotion like it was disposable. But listen to me. Your broken heart is not a message you send to get them back. Your broken heart is not a tool. Your broken heart is sacred. And the mirror it creates is not there to punish them. It's there to protect you. It's there to remind you that your love deserves a home, not a hallway. It's there to remind you that you don't have to scream to be taken seriously. It's there to remind you that the loudest boundary is the one you live, not the one you announce. So if you're in that place right now where you feel like your heart has been shattered by someone who kept coming close and then disappearing, I need you to understand, you don't need to make them feel your pain through words. Let your healing speak. Let your absence speak. Let your calm speak. Because when you stop chasing, your heart stops bleeding in front of them, and that is when they finally see what they did, not because you begged them to see it, but because there is no longer any distraction, only the mirror of what they lost, and the echo of a love they didn't protect, forces them to see what they did, what they lost, what they broke, and what they can't rewind. I used to think the only thing that could put my heart back together was their regret. I used to believe that if they could just see what they did, if they could just feel the damage, if they could just say the right words with the right trembling voice, then the ache inside me would finally loosen its grip. I told myself I wasn't asking for much, just an apology, just acknowledgement, just one moment where they looked at me and admitted, I know I hurt you. Because when someone destroys your heart in slow motion, it doesn't just hurt, it confuses you. It makes you question your memory, your standards, your sensitivity, your worth. And you start craving one thing more than love: clarity. I remember how it felt to wait for that clarity. I would wake up and check my phone like my peace lived inside a notification. I would go through my day half present, half absent, because part of me was always listening for them. I would replay moments, the way they pulled away, the way they went cold after being close, the way they vanished right when I finally let my guard down. And even after all of it, I still wanted them to come back and explain, because explanation felt like closure, and closure felt like relief. But the truth is, I wasn't just waiting for words. I was waiting for my pain to be validated by the person who caused it, and that is a dangerous place to live, because it puts your healing in the hands of someone who already proved they couldn't hold your heart carefully. Then one day, something inside me broke in a different way. Not the heartbreak kind, the awakening kind. I realized how much power I had given away, how my mood depended on them, how my self-worth rose and fell with their attention, how I had become a person who measured love by effort and measured effort by anxiety, and I didn't like who I was becoming. I didn't like the version of me that kept shrinking. I didn't like the version of me that kept hoping for crumbs like they were a feast. I didn't like the version of me that kept reaching into someone else's silence and calling it devotion. That's when I learned the hard truth. Their regret doesn't undo your pain. Even if they feel guilty, even if they cry, even if they say they didn't mean it, it doesn't rewind the nights you cried quietly so you wouldn't look too much. It doesn't undo the way you kept your emotions in your throat so they wouldn't pull away. It doesn't erase the tension your body carried, the overthinking, the tight chest, the constant feeling that you had to be perfect to be kept. Regret is an emotion. Healing is a practice. Regret can show up in a moment. Healing is what you choose every day after the moment. And what shocked me is that healing didn't start when they spoke. Healing started when I stopped waiting for them to speak. It started the first time I chose not to reopen the wound just because they knocked. It started the first time I didn't rush to explain myself to someone committed to misunderstanding me. It started the first time I sat in my own silence and realized I can survive this feeling. I don't have to chase it away by chasing them. I can let the grief come, let the memories come, let the longing come, and still not betray myself. Because that's what you've been doing without realizing it, betraying yourself in small ways to keep someone else comfortable. You call it patience, but it's self-abandonment. You call it understanding, but it's overgiving. You call it love, but it's you trying to earn safety in a place that keeps taking it away. And when you finally see that, you don't become bitter. You become honest. Honest about what you felt, honest about what you tolerated, honest about what you can never accept again. My healing didn't look glamorous. It looked like turning off my phone and sitting with the urge to check it. It looked like walking away from places that reminded me of them. It looked like crying at random times because my body was finally releasing what it had been holding. It looked like learning to sleep again without the anxiety of waiting. It looked like saying no to conversations that reopened the same wound. It looked like writing down the truth when my heart tried to romanticize the pain, because hearts do that. They remember the sweetness and forget the cost. And slowly, I started building something stronger than closure. Standards. Standards that didn't need their permission. Standards that didn't depend on their mood. Standards that didn't collapse when they got emotional. Because sometimes an avoidant will realize they hurt you, and they will reach out. Not always to repair you, sometimes to relieve themselves. Sometimes they want to clear their conscience. Sometimes they want to feel like they're not the villain. Sometimes they want to regain access to your warmth so they can breathe again. And if you're still bleeding, you will confuse their message with healing. You will confuse their guilt with change. You will confuse their loneliness with love. So I learned to separate the two. I learned to tell myself, a message is not consistency. An apology is not accountability. Tears are not a plan. Missing me is not the same as choosing me. And if they ever came back, they would have to come back to a different version of me. Not the version who begged, not the version who waited, not the version who forgave instantly just to feel close again. They would have to meet the version of me who finally understands that love without safety is just a beautiful way to suffer. And that is where your healing becomes your power. Not power over them, power over your life. The power to choose calm over chaos. The power to choose clarity over confusion. The power to stop participating in the push-pull that breaks your spirit. The power to stop calling inconsistency chemistry. The power to stop calling anxiety love. The power to stop negotiating for basic respect like it's too much to ask. One day you wake up and you realize something quietly revolutionary. You don't need them to understand the damage for the damage to be real. You don't need them to apologize for your pain to matter. You don't need them to come back for you to move forward. And that doesn't mean you never loved them. It means you finally love yourself enough to stop living in a story where your heart is always the collateral. So if they realize it, if it hits them late, if they finally feel the weight of what they broke, let them feel it. Let it teach them. Let it shape them if they choose to grow. But don't build your recovery on their awakening. Build it on your boundaries. Build it on your self-respect. Build it on the quiet promise you make to yourself that no one gets to destroy your heart twice, not with silence, not with distance, not with half-love disguised as confusion, not ever again, not while you're finally learning how to hold your own heart like it's sacred. So if you're in that place right now where you feel like your heart has been shattered by someone who kept coming close and then disappearing, I need you to understand, you don't need to make them feel your pain through words. Let your healing speak. Let your absence speak. Let your calm speak. Because when you stop chasing, your heart stops bleeding in front of them, and that is when they finally see what they did, not because you begged them to see it, but because there is no longer any distraction, only the mirror of what they lost, and the echo of a love they didn't protect, forces them to see what they did, what they lost, what they broke, and what they can't rewind.